Warning, the following program contains scenes of graphic stupidity of a poker vlogger at a home game.
Game is a 25-cent to 50-cent no-limit hold'em game. We start off with $200, and we start off with the front foot when we pick up ace-king offsuit in the cutoff. Currently, we're playing seven-handed. Under-the-gun player is going to raise it up to $1.50. The standard opening size kind of increased as the night goes on, but early on, this is pretty standard, and we're going to be putting in what is the pretty standard 3-bet. I picked a size a little bit larger than normal. I went up to $7.50. These home games, I just don't think people like to fold. I have a good hand. I'd like to make the pot bigger, typically playing 3-bet or fold from the cutoff. This hand fitting squarely into the 3-bet category. This has the advantage of driving the button player out, but the button player has no intention of being driven out of this pot as he 4-bets up to $24. Smallish 4-bet size, I think fairly standard. I don't think you have to go super large with your 4-bets. The under the gun opener is going to fold, and now it's back on us. And in game, I kind of misapplied some theory that I've been studying about some of these spots. So with 100 big blinds deep, we typically just want to be getting this in and ripping it, which is ultimately what I decide to do. I go all in for $97. In this game, that is actually the equivalent of 200 big blinds deep though, in which case we're actually playing mostly folds here when the button cold fours, mixing in some 5-bet clicks. The solver actually 5-bet folds this line, which I kind of think is ridiculous for these games. I'm also not the biggest fan of having a 5-bet range, so looking back, I would probably just flat this, even though playing out of position kind of sucks. The button player actually thought for almost 2 minutes for a pre-flop decision before he ended up mucking what he would later tell me is pocket jacks. We'll take down the first pot of the night, and we'll move on. This next hand, we're channeling our inner teenage boy. We're jacking off. I show you the cards a couple times just so we can get the joke. And then we realize there's a $1 straddle on. There's a limper in the hijack. It's folded around to the small blind, who is Taliana. She raises up to $4.25. It's too bad the extra 5 cents is tacked on there. Either way, our hand is good enough to see a flop in position. The straddler gets out of the way, and the hijack limper calls. We're playing monkey in the middle in a pot just under $14, and the flop comes out ace-4-3, two-tone. Taliana checks. We check it as well. I think we're going to be doing this a lot when we're in between two players, and the hijack checks it back. 3 ways still to a turn, which is the jack of spades. We make second pair. The front door flush does come in, but I'm not super concerned with anyone having it with no betting on the flop. So when Taliana leads for $6, I think our hand is pretty much just a pure call. That's what I decide to do. Hijack gets out of the way. We get to tangle with Taliana, heads up as the river is the queen of hearts. There's about $26 in the middle, and she's about to remind us that this is a no-limit game when she overbets the pot for $30. Now in theory, this is probably a pure fold, but she's pretty crafty, so let's break it down. Look at the pot odds we're getting. It's $30 to call to win a pot that would be around $86, which means in order to make a break-even call, we have to win over 35% of the time. So the question is, do we beat 35% of a range? I'm honestly not really sure. What I do know is I don't think she's checking many flush draws on the flop, unless she was going for the check raise, which I don't think she does every time. I don't think she'll check any strong ace-x on the flop either. She'll have a lot of non-showdown hand, like 6-7, 7-8, 9-10, that will feel inclined to bluff as well. However, there is a lot on this board that beats us, but I just can't bring myself to fold. I decide if she's got it, she's got it. I stick in the call, expecting for her to turn over the winner, but she doesn't really turn over her hand. She kind of goes to muck it, so we show our third pair. It's the best hand. We're going to take down this $85 pot with a hero call on the river. Making a correct hero call is one of the best feelings in poker. It's probably why I pay people off with the river too much. Regardless, we're right this time, and we've won our first 2 pots of the night. This next hand gets a little bit off the rails. We have 6-7 suited in the straddle. There's a double straddle on for $2 and a triple straddle on for $5. So in terms of big blinds, we're not playing all that deep, about 17 blinds effective. I decided to raise it up to $15, probably a little bit too big with how short we are. The double straddler is going to come along, and the triple straddle decides to reach into his stack. He's going to put some chips in the pot, but they're not quite calling chips. He counts out a raise up to $40. Now with 17 big blinds, we're just going to be continuing with a fairly wide range. You can see we are calling some suited connectors, but this one just falls in the fold category of hands. It is early in the night, and I kind of want to get some more money on the table, so I decide on the high variance route of an all-in for $84. He pretty quickly calls. We're going to go off to a run out with $179 in the middle. We're up against pocket nines. Gonna need a little bit of luck. And we find it with a pair of sevens on the flop. Jack of spades on the turn is no hope, and the queen of spades is a total brick for us. I said I wanted to get some more money on the table. It's time to rebuy and go to war. This next hand, we're in the small blind with 10-8 suited. Pretty good looking hand if you ask me. The low jack player is going to open it up to $1.75. And it's not captured on camera, I've cut it out for you guys, but the button player tanks for nearly a full minute before calling. That, paired with the fact that the low jack left the table in the middle of the hand, I don't think anyone's too interested in this pot, so I'm going to go ahead and 3-bet squeeze it up here to $8.50. Our read might be off because the big blind all of a sudden seems very interested in this pot as he reaches back into a stack and 4-bets up to $35. This is the third time I've been 4-bet by this player tonight. Pretty frustrating, but we're not quite deep enough to peel the 10-8. Nothing I can really do. Starting to hit a little bit of a bump in the road. If you're liking the video, I would appreciate it if you take the time to hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, and comment your favorite consecutive first names. I think my personal favorite are
Annie, Terry, Mikey, Davey, Timmy, Tommy, Joey, Robbie, Johnny, and Brian.
For this next hand, we have ace-jack offsuit on the button. The hijack has raised it up to $2.50, and the cutoff has called. I think I can go either way between calling, raising, or folding here. In game, I decided to go for the squeeze. There's a little bit of dead money out there, but I think, honestly, I'm fine with just flatting. And, like I said, folding is totally fine. Ace-jack, not the best hand to play multi-way, especially offsuit. And that's exactly what's going to happen when the hijack calls, and the cutoff is also going to call. So we go 3 ways in a 3-bet pot, luckily in position, and the flop comes out 7-8-3 two-tone. We have the jack of hearts, I guess, for a backdoor flush draw, but right now we're sitting with 2 overs. And when it checks over to us, I think heads up in position, I would be doing a lot of stabbing for a small size, probably around $12 or $13 on this board. But I just don't love starting a bluff multi-way, so I decided to check it back, and we see the king of spades on the turn. Hijack is going to check, and the cutoff is going to check as well over to us. I've been studying a lot of spots in theory where we get a lot of overbets in position on these double flush draw boards, so that's what I decided to do. I'm going to cut out a raise to $45. I'm honestly not really sure if this is a thing multi-way, but heads up, definitely is. So I go for 45, the overbet into the pot. This quickly sheds the hijack, and the cutoff has a really tough decision. He thinks for over 2 minutes before he decides to go all in for $91. It's kind of gross. I should be paying more attention and kind of know what the cutoff has behind, because if I knew he only had $91, it's pretty hard to make this bet. It's hard to fold at this point, so I decided to stick in the call, fully aware that I could be drawing dead. The river is the queen of hearts. That doesn't improve our hand. The cutoff turns over king 10 offsuit. So very light peel of the 3-bet, pretty light call on the turn as well. We commit ourselves with our turn bluff sizing and have to call off, and we lose a pretty sizable pot. This next hand is what I would call a pretty interesting one. We have 5-7 of hearts in the big blind. The $1 straddle is on. It's going to fold around to us, and we're going to raise it up to $3.50. We're going to be doing this with a pretty wide range, as you can see here, basically treating this as a blind v blind hand. The straddler is going to defend, so we go heads up to a flop, which comes out 9-5-3 two-tone. We make middle pair. I decide to check it over to him, like we're going to do with a lot of our range. Our specific hand can also choose to bet small, but I decide to play a little bit of pot control out of position. The straddler decides for a small size. In theory, he should probably be playing a polarized big bet or check strategy, but as played, I think there's no other option than check call, which is the one that I decide on. I check again in flow, and he's going to up the bet size now up to $10. So I think we have a pretty clear continue with our hand. Sometimes we're raising in equilibrium, but I think raising this turn just lets a lot of his bluffs off the hook. I call to keep his bluffs in. The river is less than ideal. It's the ace of spades. The front door flush completes. We're going to check it over to him. With plans, we think to look up a reasonable size bet, but we do not face anything near a reasonable size bet. He goes for $40, the overbet. This is a pretty uncomfortable spot. On the surface, we only have third pair and the flush completed, but we've played this hand very passively, and we will have to defend down with some of our 5x combos if we want to avoid being exploited. I think for the most part in live poker, minimum defense frequency is a little bit overrated, and you can pretty much overfold a lot of these spots. This player is more than capable. Drinks have been flowing a little bit tonight. I'm just having a hard time letting this one go. I think this large size probably wouldn't be taken with hands like 9x or ace-x, so I don't think he's betting one pair for this size. I also felt in the moment that straights also wouldn't go this large. With a 7 of hearts in our hand, we block a lot of his 7 deuce combos, which is important to note for this game. It just sort of feels like a flush or some air, and like I mentioned on the flop, in equilibrium he's playing big bet or check. This player probably doesn't know that in theory, but I do think he would size up with his flush draws. I just called on the turn to keep his bluffs in, and we've given him plenty of rope. For some reason, I just really don't feel like he has value here. I stick in the call, and he shows us jack, deuce, offsuit. He started an airball bluff on the flop, barreled on the turn, and got there runner on us on the river. He gets some FaceTime for the camera. Our read was right on the turn. I'm honestly not that mad about this hand, but nevertheless, we get owned and we lose another pot. You guys know how people multi-table in online poker? Well, we're gonna multi-table in live poker right now because these two hands are very similar. They're both button versus hijack spots against Taliana. The first one, we 3-bet ace-jack offsuit. The second one, we have ace-9 suited. She's gonna call our 3-bet, and we're gonna call her open. We're gonna go heads up to a flop. First one doesn't hit our hand. The second one doesn't hit it either. We c-bet, she c-bets, she calls, I call, still heads up to a turn. She checks, I check on both hands, and on the river, she checks and I check it back. I turn over my hands, and they're both no good. She's gonna scoop both boards with pretty speculative holdings. I'm not sure how many tables I have to play in order to win a pot off of her, but either way, I'm getting absolutely crushed. At this point, it's been 2.5 hours since I've won a hand. I'm starting to get pretty bored and pretty tilted, which is probably why I've thrown on the double straddle for $2. And after the middle position player has made it $5 and the cutoff has called, I've decided to squeeze it up to $25 with King 8 of diamonds. The middle position player and the cutoff have both called. We're 3 ways out of position in a 3-bet pot with $76 in the middle. And it comes pretty good for our particular hand. It's King 5 deuce two-tone. We make top pair. I check it as I'm going to do a lot out of position multi-way. The middle position player is also going to check, and the cutoff stands for $40. I didn't check to fold this hand. I stick in the call, and things start to get a little bit dicey when the middle position player thinks for a while and cuts out some chips. He's going to come along for the turn as well. So we're still 3 ways to a turn, which comes the deuce of spades. Brings in a second flush draw. I check once again, as does the middle position player. The cutoff reaches into a stack, flicks out an oversized chip, and announces a bet of $60. This is less than 1/3 the size of the pot. Seems fairly weak to me, kind of like he's trying to set his price with a draw. If the cutoff does have a draw, I don't want to give him the chance to check back the river. I decide to put him to the test by going all in for $213 effective. The middle position player thinks for a while before he puts in the call, and the cutoff pretty much snap calls behind. Probably not great for us. This pot is over $750. The cutoff has King 10 offsuit. Apparently they love this hand today. And the middle position player has the ace high club draw. The river is the 4 of diamonds. We're going to lose the main, but we are going to be able to take down the side pot. I'm not really sure what happened in this hand. They keep showing up with middling strength hands, and I keep showing up, and I can't even beat those. We get a little rebate from the middle position player, but we lose this very large main pot as our nightmare session continues. You guys can do me a favor, like this video, subscribe to the channel, and leave a comment. Let me know what your least favorite hand is. Mine is starting to become King 10 offsuit. If you thought we were done losing pots today, you are gravely mistaken. There's at least 5 minutes left in this video, so I'm going to do the best I can to lose the most amount of money in that time. There's a hijack raise at $2, the button calls. I'm in the small blind with a suited connector. I kind of want to play pots with the button player. I call, as does the big blind, and we flop a gut shot on King 7-5 two-tone. We check it in flow, and it checks all the way around. We get to see a free turn, which is the ace of diamonds. We're now double gutted. I think we can have a lot of flush combos, but this multi-way, I think leading out here looks more suspicious than a guy reading a newspaper on a park bench. So I decided to check it in flow. The hijack bets out for $4. He knows this ace will favor his range over the field caller's ranges. It's a little dicey with 3 diamonds out there, as some of our straight outs could be muddy, but I decided to stick in the $4, looking to hit one of our 6 outs. The big blind calls behind, and would you look at that, the deuce of hearts is one of those outs. Just like the early Mesopotamians, we make a wheel. Now the only question is how to extract the most amount of value. I've been bluffing my socks off tonight and putting in large overbets with some speculative holdings. It's been about 4 hours of play, and I've finally made a value hand. My image is terrible right now. and I'm looking to cash in on that as I fire massive 2.5x overbet for $50 into the $20 pot. Now looking back, this is far too big a size with the flush out there. It's going to be really hard for worse hands to call, even two pairs are in a gross spot. The big blind doesn't seem to care how much I bet as he ships his stack in for around $200. As weird as it sounds, if the hijack player folds, I'm fully planning on snapping off this all in because I think the big blind could have some two pairs or sets that he's shoving for value, but the hijack is deep in the tank, and when he decides to stack out a tower of chips and move all in, the jig is kind of up. I'm still fairly confident we're ahead of the big blind, but the hijack just has a flush here 10 out of 10 times. As played, this is a pretty easy fold, but I'm still kind of proud of it based on how tilted I was, because this is the strongest hand I made in 6 hours of playing. We fold face up, the big blind rolls over 7 deuce for a river 2 pair. Our read was spot on there, but the hijack player has jack 9 of diamonds for the turn flush. Kudos to him for checking a flush draw on the flop. We still probably lost the maximum with our ridiculous river sizing, but this night was probably top 3 most tilted I've ever been, so still kind of proud of myself that I was able to find the relatively quick fold. That brings us to our last hand of the night, where we have ace-king offsuit on the button. We started our first hand with the church. We're going to end our last hand with the church. Quite a biblical session. That is, if you're referring to Genesis, Book of Kings, and Elijah's encounter with drought, because the table's been barren for us. We haven't won a pot in a very long time. We've opened to $3 and the small blind has 3-bet. On the top here, you can see the solver output for 200 big blinds, which prefers flatting. With 100 bigs on the bottom, we prefer raising, but we're super deep. So I decide to play a little bit tricky and just flat with the ace-king in position. We go heads up to a flop, which is 9-5-4 two-tone. 2 clubs out there. We have the ace of clubs, making us feel fairly comfortable. So when the small blind checks it over to us, we can mix between a small size and a check. I think checking is fine, trying to keep our range wide across some turns, which is the beautiful ace of diamonds. We have top pair, top kicker, pretty disguised hand as well. The small blind is now going to lead for pot. $30 into 31. In equilibrium, we're pure calling. I think in practice, pure calling as well. We had the best suits for ace-king that you could have, blocking both nut flush draws. So no real reason to raise, want to keep his bluffs in. The river is the queen of spades, and he's going to check it over to us. The solver likes a 2/3 pot size value bet. Let's see what size we find in game. We go for 61 into 91. Pretty proud that I was able to find the right size. I really, in the moment, wanted to get greedy and overbet and just jam for about $200 and try and look bluffy, but I am proud that I found the preferred sizing. And the small blind is pretty deep in the tank here. Now, in theory, he is supposed to be calling down with some worse hands than ours, like ace-jack or king-queen, especially some queen-high club draws. Interestingly enough, the solver is calling mostly with queen-10 here in the small blind scenarios and folding queen-jack. That is because queen-jack combos just block slightly more of our bluffs here. He's in the tank. I've been making large bets with air all night, and I've never had it. And while we only have 1 pair in a 3-bet pot, it kind of feels like the nuts. I've been advertising big bluffs for the past few hours, hoping to cash in on that image. The small blind is walking us through his thought process, and it seems like he might have been paying attention to some prior hands I played when he says this.
Is he capable of bluffing? I don't know, I've seen him bluff a lot.
That's right, I never have it. I'm always bluffing. You should definitely call. And it seems like the small blind tends to agree with me, because not too long after, he cuts out some chips to slide them across the middle. We fast roll the ace-king. It's the best hand. We're going to scoop a more than $200 pot to end the session, and Dookie Bets can't help but get one last needle in.
Good job, JQ. You won a hand tonight.
That's right, we finally won a hand. It is possible. Still nowhere near the even mark. This one feels really good. We've been playing for 6 hours. I finally made a value hand. I'm not in the mood to wait 6 hours for another one. It's time to rack up and cut our losses. All right, I guess you guys deserve an outro since you didn't really get an intro. Into the game for too much money. Out for $300. So, lost too much money, $700 on the night. Just like the most tilting session ever. I'm actually kind of proud of myself that I was able to like come back to reality a little bit and manage my breathing a bit at the end. Should be able to do it earlier, but just like it's the most tilting things ever happening. So we did some gambly things to get the gain to be a little bigger at the beginning.
But toward the middle, it was just super bad. Just really, it was like things that in my head, I'm like, this is the right play here. And I just wasn't doing it. I was just choosing the aggressive route just to get more money in the pot or put pressure or try and get unstuck, basically. When you get that unstuck, you just gotta take it one hand at a time. You can't win it all back in one hand, typically. So you need to get better at that, I guess. Thank you guys for watching this guide of how not to play poker. You're welcome. Don't make the same mistakes I made tonight. Did I mention we played for 5.5 hours and no aces, no kings, no queens, no jacks? No 10s, no 9s? Come on, guys. Like and subscribe if you haven't already. It would make this night a whole lot better. Thank you guys for your support one more time. And until next time, good luck at the tables.